The night before my son's wedding, his fiancée looked me straight in the eye and said, "After tomorrow, Mrs. Harper, you're no longer part of our family." I stood there, clutching the scrapbook I'd made for them, feeling my heart turn to glass. The next morning, I didn't go to the ceremony. I stayed home in silence, staring at the ocean outside my window. By noon, Malibu was buzzing with chaos. The wedding had fallen apart. And the reason why would shatter everyone's perfect illusion. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed until the clock struck midnight, the sound of the waves outside mingling with my shallow breathing. Somewhere between heartbreak and disbelief, something inside me shifted. For years, I'd sacrificed without complaint. I had worked double shifts at the rehab center, skipped vacations, and counted coins to make sure Ryan never missed a school trip. I'd told myself every single struggle was worth it because one day he would have the life I never could. You did everything you could, and somehow, that was enough. After that call, I decided to start something new. The story Claire had written about our ordeal had inspired hundreds of messages, letters from mothers, widows, women who'd been silenced by fear or shame. Some shared their own heartbreaks, others just wrote to say thank you for surviving out loud. Reading their words, I realized something powerful. My pain had become a bridge. So I started a support group at the rehab center, small at first, just 6 women. We met every Wednesday evening after work, sitting in a circle with tea and soft music. We called it Second Tides. The idea was simple. If the first tide of life knocks you down, the second one teaches you how to float. At our first meeting, a woman named Teresa spoke. Her husband had left her for someone half her age, and she was drowning in shame. Another, Linda, not my friend Carol's colleague, but a retired teacher, had just lost her son to addiction and didn't know how to move forward. They looked at me like I had answers, but all I could offer was truth. I don't have a roadmap, I told them. I just know the ocean doesn't stop because of one storm. It keeps moving. So should we. Week by week, we shared stories, laughter, tears. Some nights we just sat in silence, watching the sun dip below the water. And slowly, I saw change. Teresa began painting again. Linda started volunteering at a youth shelter. The others found small joys, new hobbies, new friends, new hope. Helping them healed me too. Each story reminded me how universal pain is and how healing multiplies when it's shared. We weren't broken women. We were women in repair, and that's a sacred kind of strength. One evening after the meeting, as I was locking up, Carol appeared at the door with that familiar, mischievous grin. "You've become a bit of a local legend," she teased. "There's talk about turning your story into a feature, maybe a documentary." I laughed. A documentary? About what? A tired nurse who survived a social media scandal? She shrugged. About truth. About resilience. People need that. I smiled but shook my head. Maybe someday. Right now, I'm just learning how to live quietly. But the truth was, I'd already started writing again. The little essays I'd been jotting down at night had grown into chapters about motherhood, forgiveness, identity. I didn't know if anyone would ever read them, but writing them felt like exhaling after years of holding my breath. One morning, while I was editing a chapter called The Weight We Carry, I got an email from Claire. "Evelyn, I wanted to let you know that the article about you and Ryan has been nominated for a state journalism award. Not for the scandal, but for the truth it revealed about love, lies, and survival. Thank you for trusting me." Claire. I stared at the screen for a long time, tears pooling in my eyes. Not because of the nomination, but because my story, our story, had turned into something larger than pain. It had become light. That weekend, Ryan drove up with Natalie to visit. She brought homemade lemon cake and flowers, simple and unpretentious. We had dinner out on the porch, laughter mixing with the sound of the waves. At one point, Ryan got up and began fixing one of the porch lights that had gone dim. Natalie leaned toward me and whispered, "He talks about you all the time. Says you're the strongest person he knows." I smiled, touched. "He gives me too much credit." She shook her head. "No, I don't think he gives you enough." After they left that night, I sat outside a while longer, looking at the stars. The ocean was calm, the moon hanging low like a silver coin tossed into eternity. I thought of all the versions of myself I'd been: the young mother patching up scraped knees, the tired nurse counting bills, the heartbroken woman clutching a scrapbook, the fighter standing up to lies, the survivor finding peace. All those versions were still me. Just as the ocean is still the same, no matter how many waves crash and retreat. I picked up my notebook and began to write again. Sometimes we think the world breaks us to punish us, but maybe it breaks us to show us what we're made of. I used to think strength was about holding on. Now I know it's about knowing when to let go. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to live in the wound. I paused, then added another line. If you ever feel lost, go stand by the sea. The tide will remind you that endings are just beginnings in disguise. And now the woman he chose to marry had erased me with a single sentence. I whispered to the empty room. If I'm no longer part of their family after tomorrow, then I won't be there at all. The morning sun crept through the blinds before I even closed my eyes. I moved on autopilot, boiling water for coffee, laying out the pale lavender dress I'd bought for the ceremony. The one Ryan once said made me look like spring. As I wrote, a sense of clarity filled me, not just peace but purpose. My life hadn't been ruined by that night before the wedding. It had been rerouted. It took losing what I thought was everything to find what truly mattered. My voice, my boundaries, my freedom. A few weeks later, our group's second tides expanded to 12 women. Some brought friends, others brought stories of healing. One of them, Teresa, surprised me with a small gift, a bracelet made of sea glass. You said the ocean keeps moving, she told me. So I thought you should have a piece of it. I wore it every day after that. Whenever I looked at it, I remembered that even broken glass can become something beautiful when the waves are done shaping it. One night, as I was cleaning up after another meeting, I caught my reflection in the window, hair streaked with silver, eyes softer but wiser. I didn't see the weary mother who'd been told she didn't belong. I saw a woman who had built her own belonging. When I turned off the lights and stepped outside, the wind carried the faint sound of laughter from the beach, young couples maybe, or children chasing waves. I smiled. Life was happening, endlessly, beautifully, indifferently, and for the first time, I was glad to simply be part of it. That night, before bed, I opened my notebook one last time and wrote a letter I never intended to send. To Chloe, I hope you found peace somewhere, even if it's far from here. I no longer wish you harm. I understand now that people hurt others when they don't know how to stop hurting themselves. I won't let your choices define me, but I will let them remind me that kindness without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. I wish you healing. I wish you honesty. And I wish you the kind of love that doesn't destroy the people who give it to you. Asterisk. I signed it simply, Evelyn Harper, folded the page and tucked it into the back of my scrapbook. It wasn't forgiveness for her. It was closure for me. Then I turned off the light, lay down, and listened to the rhythm of the ocean outside. It sounded, finally, like peace. But when I touched the fabric, Chloe's voice came back like a knife to the chest. So I sat at the kitchen table, coffee cooling beside me, and made a decision I never imagined I'd make. I wasn't going. By 7, my phone began to buzz, texts from relatives, cousins flying in from San Francisco, Ryan himself. Mom, can't wait to see you. Don't be late. Each message felt like a stone pressing deeper into my chest. I set the phone face down and stared out the window at the restless waves. At 9, the calls grew frantic. Ryan's voice came through the voicemail, laced with worry. Mom, Chloe said you weren't feeling well last night, but I know that's not true. Please call me back. Please. I pressed the phone against my heart, tears spilling down my cheeks. Every instinct screamed for me to run to him, to hold him like when he was small and frightened of thunder. But I couldn't. Not this time. At 10:30, my sister Marilyn knocked on my door, still wearing her bridesmaid's dress, her hair pinned and trembling. Evelyn, what on earth are you doing? She cried, barging in. Everyone's looking for you. The ceremony starts in less than an hour. I shook my head, unable to meet her eyes. I'm not going. She froze. Not going? Evelyn, are you out of your mind? This is Ryan's wedding. I swallowed hard, my voice breaking. He's marrying a woman who told me to my face that I'm not family. She doesn't want me there. Why should I go? Marilyn's anger faltered, replaced by disbelief. She said that? Last night? I nodded, staring down at my hands. She looked me in the eye and said it. Every word. My sister sank into the nearest chair, speechless. For a long minute, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Finally, she whispered, Oh my God. I laughed bitterly through my tears. Let them say what they want. Let them think I'm cold or proud. I've been judged my whole life. What's one more time? By 11, the neighborhood grew quiet. I watched from the window as the neighbors, dressed in suits and floral dresses, climbed into their cars, heading to the church on the hill in Malibu. My own keys sat untouched on the counter. When the church bells rang, their sound carried faintly over the ocean breeze. I sat there, silent, the scrapbook resting on my lap. That should have been the end of it, a mother too hurt, too humiliated, sitting out the happiest day of her son's life. But fate, as I would soon learn, had other plans, because by noon, my phone rang again. Marilyn's voice shook on the other end, her words tripping over each other. "Evelyn, oh God, you need to sit down." My pulse quickened. "What's wrong?" "The wedding," she whispered. "It's not happening." For a second, I couldn't breathe. "What do you mean not happening?" Her voice cracked. "Ryan found out the truth. About Chloe. About everything." The room spun. My knees went weak, and I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. "What truth?" Marilyn hesitated, then said the words that would unravel everything I thought I knew. "Chloe's been lying. About the man she works for, about her family, and about why she really wanted to marry Ryan." Outside my window, the waves crashed harder against the shore, as if the ocean itself was bracing for the storm about to break. And in that moment, I understood sometimes staying away doesn't mean giving up. Sometimes it's the only way to let the truth find its way to the surface. Marilyn's voice trembled on the other end of the line. "Evelyn, you need to hear this from me before it spreads all over town." I gripped the phone tighter, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. "Just tell me." I still remember that night as clearly as if it happened an hour ago. The smell of salt from the Pacific drifted through my kitchen window, the kind of California evening where the sky turned the color of tangerines melting into deep violet. I had spent the last 3 hours tying ribbons around a scrapbook I'd been working on for weeks, a lifetime of photographs, newspaper clippings, and letters from my son Ryan's childhood. Ryan found out this morning," she said between shaky breaths. "Chloe's been seeing someone else, her boss, the one she's been working late with." For a long moment I couldn't speak. My brain refused to process the words. I sank onto the couch, the scrapbook still open beside me, Ryan's smile frozen on a page from his high school graduation. No, that can't be true," I whispered. "It is," Marilyn said. "One of Ryan's groomsmen, Ethan, showed him the proof photos taken just 2 weeks ago. Chloe and her boss in Santa Clara. It was intimate. He thought you should know before the whole ceremony went ahead." I pressed my free hand to my mouth, trying to stifle a cry. My poor boy. The heartbreak I'd tried to spare myself from attending the wedding had found its way to him anyway. "What happened then?" I finally asked. "Ryan confronted her," Marilyn said quietly. "Right there in the bridal suite. Everyone heard the shouting. And Evelyn," she paused, her voice faltering, "it didn't stop there. He found out something worse." He swallowed hard. "Worse?" She and her family weren't just lying about the affair. They were lying about everything. Her father's business went bankrupt months ago. They needed the marriage, needed Ryan for money, connections, reputation. There was even a prenup drafted that would have funneled most of his income into their accounts. Chloe's father bragged about it at the rehearsal dinner. Someone overheard and told Ethan. That's why Ethan brought the photos. He realized the whole wedding was a trap. My stomach twisted. "Oh my God," I could hear Marilyn sniffle. When Ryan confronted her, it was chaos. She tried to deny it, of course. But when he held up the photos, the truth was right there. She said it was a misunderstanding, that she loved him, that it didn't mean anything. But Ryan wasn't buying it. I imagined it as she spoke the church in Malibu, sunlight streaming through tall windows, guests whispering, a pastor waiting nervously by the altar. I could almost see my son, standing there in his suit, face pale, holding his phone with trembling hands as the truth tore his life apart. "He walked out," Marilyn said softly. "He told everyone there would be no wedding. His exact words were, 'She betrayed my trust. This ceremony is cancelled.'" I closed my eyes. In that instant, the anger, grief, and disbelief swirled into something wordless. A strange mix of pain and relief washed through me. Pain because my son's heart had been broken. Relief because Somehow, fate had protected him when I couldn't. Marilyn's voice broke through my thoughts. You should have seen it, Evelyn. The guests were stunned. Chloe's parents started shouting, accusing Ryan of humiliating her. Chloe was crying, begging him to listen. But he wouldn't. He told her that she'd already said enough the night before, something about how she told you weren't family anymore. I froze. He said that? In front of everyone? Yes, she said. He told her he knew exactly what she'd done. To him and to you. And that was the moment he walked out. He didn't look back. Tears burned in my eyes, spilling freely down my cheeks. I hadn't even been there, but I could picture it as if I had. My boy, the same boy who used to cling to my apron when thunder scared him now, standing tall, protecting both of us with his words. When the call ended, I sat in silence, listening to the sound of the waves pounding the shore outside. The phone lay limp in my hand, the screen dark. He had seen the truth. Without my help, without my interference, he had seen her for who she really was. I don't remember how long I sat there. The afternoon sun moved across the floor, tracing slow golden lines over the carpet. When I finally rose, I walked to the window and whispered to no one in particular, You wanted me gone, Chloe. But you're the one who's gone now. That evening, Santa Monica felt eerily quiet. No cars, no chatter, just the distant hum of the ocean. But my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Friends, neighbors, even old co-workers were calling, each one with the same story. Did you hear? The wedding's off? They said she cheated. They said her family was scheming. At first, I thought people were calling out of sympathy. But as the night went on, the tone changed. The questions grew sharper, suspicious. Evelyn, did you have anything to do with it? Did you tell Ryan something? Did you try to stop the wedding? By midnight, I understood what was happening. Chloe's family wasn't just licking their wounds, they were rewriting the story. The next morning, the headlines confirmed it. From his first steps on the hardwood floor of our old apartment to the day he graduated from law school, every page carried a piece of my soul. I thought it would be my gift to him and Chloe, a reminder of where love begins. When I drove to the rehearsal dinner that evening, my heart was light, though my hands trembled on the steering wheel. I had planned to stay only long enough to give them the book, say a few warm words, and quietly slip out. I didn't want to intrude. My neighbor slipped a tablet across the fence for me to see. Log read, calls off wedding minutes before ceremony mother illegally interfered. My stomach dropped. There were photos too, Chloe sitting alone in her wedding dress, mascara streaked, captioned, Some mothers don't know when to let go. Thousands of comments followed, people comforting her, strangers calling me controlling, jealous, cruel. I sat at the kitchen table, the light from the screen flickering against my hands. I had no words. Only a rising sense of disbelief so heavy it felt like drowning. Later that afternoon, Ryan came home. He looked exhausted, his suit jacket still crumpled, tie half undone, his eyes red. Without a word, he walked straight to me and hugged me. Hard. I felt him trembling. I'm so sorry, Mom, he whispered. You were right about her. I held him tighter, running my hand through his hair like I used to when he was little. No, sweetheart. You had to see it yourself. That's how we learn. He pulled back, shaking his head. She's already online, Mom. She's telling everyone you poisoned me against her. Her parents are threatening to sue you for defamation. I blinked, stunned. Sue me? For what? For ruining their reputation, he said bitterly. For making her look bad. I laughed softly, though there was nothing funny about it. Oh, Ryan, the truth doesn't ruin people, it only exposes them. Still, I could see the fear in his eyes. They're powerful, Mom. They know lawyers. Her father already called my firm threatening to go public unless I clear her name. I reached for his hand across the table. Let him. You've done nothing wrong, neither have I. He looked down, his jaw clenched. I just don't want you dragged into this mess. But I was already in it. Whether I liked it or not, Chloe's family had made me their villain, the overbearing mother, the destroyer of weddings. When he finally went to bed, I stayed up, staring at the dark ocean through the window. I thought about the years I'd spent surviving storms worse than this, the nights I'd worked double shifts, the mornings I'd stitched my uniform and my pride together with the same thread. This wasn't going to break me. Not again. The next day, a letter arrived in the mail. Thick envelope, official seal. I opened it slowly, hands trembling. It was from the Bennett's attorney. Notice of intent to pursue legal action for defamation, emotional distress, and interference with contractual relations. I almost laughed. Contractual relations. Was that what they called a marriage now? I drove straight to Carol's office, my old friend, the one who'd always been better with the law than I ever could be. She skimmed the papers, her expression hardening. They're bluffing, Evelyn. This isn't about winning a case, it's about scaring you into silence. But you know what this means, don't you? I nodded slowly. They're not done. Carol set the papers aside and looked me dead in the eye. Then you can't be done either. That night, as the sun set behind the Santa Monica Pier, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea and the scrapbook open on my lap. The pages fluttered in the breeze, soft as memory. I stared at a photo of Ryan as a boy, grinning with his toy boat. Back then, I used to tell him that no matter how rough the waves, if you hold your course, the tide will turn in your favor. Now, it was time for me to believe it too, because if Chloe Bennett thought she could destroy me with lies, she was about to learn what happens when a mother who spent her life surviving storms finally decides to fight back. The days after the cancelled wedding blurred together like watercolor bleeding on wet paper. Morning and night lost their meaning. The air in Santa Monica felt heavier, thick with salt and rumor. Everywhere I went, the grocery store, the coffee shop, even my shift at the rehab center, people whispered. I could feel their eyes on me, warm with curiosity but cold with judgment. Some were subtle, offering tight smiles and half-hearted condolences. Others were bolder. Evelyn, dear, I heard such a shame about the wedding. I hope those stories online aren't true. Oh, what stories? I asked one afternoon, though I already knew. The woman from down the street looked almost relieved to explain. Oh, you know, that you told Ryan not to marry Chloe, that you spread things about her family. It's all over social media. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. People believe what they want to believe. But inside, I was boiling. By the end of the week, my name had been dragged through more gossip threads than I could count. I told myself that this was their time now, their story to write. The restaurant in Malibu was dazzling strings of fairy lights, white tablecloths that shimmered like pearl. Everyone looked so young, so confident, like a painting of perfection. I spotted Ryan across the room, laughing with his groomsmen, that easy, dimpled grin that had carried me through the hardest years of my life. He looked happy, and that alone made me proud. Then Chloe appeared at the doorway. Jealous mother ruins son's happiness. Overbearing widow sabotages her son's wedding. Toxic mother-in-law strikes again. Each headline felt like a blade twisting deeper. And through it all, Chloe played her part flawlessly. Her posts were calculated a picture of her holding a wilted bouquet with the caption, "Some people can't stand to see others happy." Another of her sitting on the beach, looking out at the horizon. The words, "Healing takes time, but lies last forever," floating beneath. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. "You're so strong." "He doesn't deserve you." "That mother sounds evil." Every word was a dagger. Ryan begged me not to respond. "Mom, she's trying to bait you," he said, rubbing his tired eyes. "Don't give her the satisfaction." But it wasn't satisfaction she wanted, it was control. She was shaping the story, painting herself as the innocent victim, me as the monster in the shadows. On the 5th day, another letter came, this time not from her father's lawyer, but from a journalist. "Mrs. Harper," it began, "we've been following the story of your son's cancelled wedding. Several sources claim you influenced his decision and spread defamatory rumors about the bride. Would you like to comment before publication?" I set the letter down, my hands trembling. Comment? The audacity of it made my chest ache. I'd spent my life feeding patients in hospital cafeterias, holding strangers' hands while their loved ones died. I had lived quietly, honestly, working my way through every hardship without complaint. And now, because of one cruel, manipulative girl, I was being cast as a villain in a story I didn't even write. That night, I couldn't sleep. The hum of the ocean outside my window was no comfort. It sounded like accusation. I turned on the lamp, opened the scrapbook again, and flipped to the first page. Ryan's baby picture, wrapped in a blanket, his tiny fist clutching my finger. I remembered that day vividly, the nurse saying, "You're on your own now, Mrs. Harper," and me whispering back, "That's all right. I'll figure it out." And I had. For 28 years, I had figured it out. Alone. So why was I letting this woman, this stranger, take away the life I'd built with lies and hashtags? The next morning, I drove to Carol's office. She was waiting with 2 cups of coffee and a knowing look. "You couldn't sleep either, huh?" "Not a minute," I said, sitting down. "They're trying to destroy me, Carol." She leaned back in her chair, scanning the stack of printouts on her desk. "I know. They're good at it too. They understand optics, the court of public opinion. But there's something they didn't count on." "What's that?" "You," she said simply. "You've got the truth." I frowned. "The truth doesn't always win." Carol smiled faintly. "Not unless you fight for it. Lucky for you, I know someone who can help." She picked up her phone, made a quick call, and handed it to me. "This is Claire Vega, investigative journalist. She doesn't do gossip, she does evidence." That conversation changed everything. Claire listened quietly as I explained everything, Chloe's words the night before the wedding, the scrapbook, the threats, the defamation. When I finished, she said, "Do you have proof of any of this?" "I have the prenup," I said. "Ryan never signed it, but he has a copy. It's disgusting. It would have handed most of his income to Chloe's family." Claire's tone sharpened. "That's more than proof. That's motive." Within days, Carol and I began gathering everything we could. Emails, text messages, screenshots, bank filings, anything that showed how desperate the Bennett family had been for money. Carol even dug through public court records, uncovering a string of lawsuits and bankruptcies that painted a very different picture of their so-called success. The deeper we dug, the clearer it became. Chloe hadn't fallen in love with my son. She'd targeted him. Ryan tried to stay strong. But I could see how the shame was eating at him. Every time his phone buzzed, he winced. "They're posting again, Mom, saying I ruined her life, saying you manipulated me." One evening, as he sat on the porch staring out at the sea, I joined him with 2 mugs of tea. His face looked older, carved by exhaustion and heartbreak. "Ryan," I said softly, "you can't control what people say. You can only control what you know to be true." He nodded, not looking at me. "I just hate that they're coming after you." I smiled faintly. She was radiant, as always. Perfect posture, perfect makeup, perfect smile. But something about her eyes unsettled me. They were colder than the ocean outside. She approached me gracefully, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "Mrs. Harper," she said with that honeyed tone that could make even a threat sound polite. "What brings you here tonight?" I smiled and held out the scrapbook, wrapped neatly in a pale blue ribbon. "I made something for Ryan, for both of you. They've underestimated me before. I survived worse than gossip." 2 weeks later, the Bennetts made their next move. They hosted a press dinner at a Beverly Hills hotel, an attempt to salvage their image. The invitation was plastered online. A chance to clarify recent misunderstandings regarding our family. Carol saw it first. "You should stay away from that circus," she warned. But something in me shifted. Maybe it was anger. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe that fierce mother's instinct that refuses to be silenced. "No," I said. "I'm going." The night of the dinner, I slipped into the same pale lavender dress I'd bought for the wedding. I wanted them to see me, the woman they'd tried to erase. The ballroom glittered with gold accents and forced smiles. Chloe stood near the head of the table, draped in a black gown, every hair perfectly in place. Her father, David, greeted guests with his politician's grin. When he saw me, the smile froze. "Well," he said smoothly, "look who decided to join us, Mrs. Harper. I didn't expect you'd come. I figured I deserved to hear the lies firsthand," I said calmly, taking a seat across from them. Chloe tilted her head, her eyes glinting. "Still bitter, I see. Still lying, I see." I shot back. The air grew thick. David cleared his throat. "We're here to find a peaceful resolution. This whole ordeal has been an embarrassment," I interrupted. "A fraud? A failed business transaction disguised as love?" Chloe's mother gasped. David's composure cracked for the first time. "Watch your tone, Mrs. Harper. You're treading on dangerous ground." "Oh, I know exactly where I'm treading," I said, reaching into my purse. I pulled out a folder and set it on the table. Clause 14, subsection 3 of your precious prenup, 75% of Ryan's future income would go to accounts held jointly by Chloe Bennett and her father. Care to explain that? Gasps rippled around the room. Even a few journalists looked up from their plates. Chloe's smile faltered. "You wouldn't dare make that public." I leaned forward, my voice low but steady. "Watch me." The silence that followed was deafening. Her father's face turned red, her mother began whispering frantic prayers, and Chloe just stared at me, hatred burning behind her perfect lashes. Ryan, who had come with me despite his protests, rose from his seat. His voice shook, but his words were clear. "You lied to me, Chloe. You lied to my mother. You told her she wasn't family, and you told me you loved me while you were scheming behind my back." "Ryan, please," she pleaded, tears forming on cue. "It wasn't like that. He cut her off. "No. You've said enough. You almost made me turn against the only person who's ever truly loved me. That ends tonight." He reached for my hand. I stood beside him, my heart pounding with something between pain and pride. As we walked out of that glittering ballroom, Chloe's voice echoed behind us, shrill, desperate, venomous. "You'll regret this, both of you." But the only thing I regretted was ever believing she had a heart. When we stepped out into the cool California night, Ryan turned to me, eyes wet but clear. "Mom," he whispered, "I should have listened to you." I smiled through my tears. "No, sweetheart, you had to see it for yourself. Now you know what truth feels like." That night, for the first time in months, I slept without nightmares. But deep down, I knew the war wasn't over, because people like the Bennetts didn't go quietly, and the next chapter of their revenge was already on its way. For a brief, flickering moment, I thought that night at the Beverly Hills Hotel would mark the end of it all. Chloe's family had been exposed before a room full of people. Ryan had spoken his truth, and I had reclaimed my dignity. We drove home in silence, our hands still linked, the city lights flashing like fading memories in the rearview mirror. But peace, I learned, is a fragile thing. And for people like the Bennetts, humiliation is never the end, it's the beginning of revenge. The next morning, my phone rang before sunrise. Carol's voice was sharp. "Evelyn, brace yourself. They're not backing down." "What now?" I asked, though a pit had already opened in my stomach. "They've gone to the press again. This time, they're saying you fabricated those financial documents, that you hacked into their private accounts." I laughed bitterly. "Me? I can barely remember my Wi-Fi password." "They don't care if it's true," Carol said. "They just need the illusion. It's just memories. I thought it might be nice for you two to look through it before tomorrow." She didn't even glance down. Instead, she leaned in so close I could smell her perfume, expensive, sharp, the kind that clings. Her smile stayed, but her voice dropped to a whisper that sliced through me. "After tomorrow, you're no longer part of this family." At first, I thought I'd misheard her. I blinked, unsure whether it was the clink of glasses or the hum of music playing tricks on me. "They're painting you as a bitter, manipulative woman who'll do anything to ruin her son's happiness." And just like that, the war of perception raged again. Only now, it wasn't whispers, it was headlines. Every local news outlet picked it up. Talk shows debated the meddling mother who crossed the line. Even Ryan's law firm started receiving calls from reporters asking if he would distance himself from me. He spent the whole day trying to protect both of us, answering politely, declining comments, but I could see the exhaustion in his eyes when he came home that night. "They won't stop," he said, dropping his briefcase by the door. "They're threatening to file a restraining order if you keep defaming them online." I blinked. "I haven't said a word online." "I know that. They don't." He rubbed his temples. "Mom, they're trying to crush us financially, emotionally, any way they can. And..." I stared at him for a long moment. Then I said, "Then we fight back." He looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean we stop letting them control the story. If they want a public war, they'll get one, but this time, on our terms." That night, I met Carol at her office again. We spread every document across the desk. The prenup, the bankruptcy records, the property foreclosures tied to Bennett investments, even a leaked message from Chloe's father bragging about turning the Harper boy into a golden goose. Carol's friend from a local financial crimes unit confirmed that many of the Bennett's assets had been hidden through shell companies. "It's not just fraud," Carol said, flipping through the papers. "It's criminal intent. If this goes public, they'll be finished." I hesitated. "Are you sure about this?" I don't want to hurt Ryan any more than he's already been hurt. Carol gave me a firm look. Evelyn, this isn't about revenge. It's about truth. You can't heal in the dark. Her words stayed with me. The next day, I called Claire Vega, the journalist who'd first listened to my story. I told her I was ready to talk. She came to my house that afternoon, recorder in hand, her notebook open. We sat by the window, the ocean murmuring softly in the distance. I told her everything, every word Chloe had said to me that night before the wedding, every insult, every manipulation. I showed her the prenup, the records, the letters from their lawyers. Claire took it all in with quiet intensity, only interrupting to ask for dates, names, confirmations. When we finished, she looked at me thoughtfully. You realize what will happen once this goes public? I nodded. Yes, they'll come after me harder. But at least I won't be hiding anymore. She smiled faintly. That's courage, Mrs. Harper. Most people don't have it. A week later, her article hit the front page of the California Sentinel. Behind the cancelled Malibu wedding, the Bennett family's secret financial schemes exposed. The piece was devastating and honest. It laid everything bare. The bankruptcy cover-ups, the predatory prenup, the manipulation, even the photos of Chloe's affair that Ethan had reluctantly confirmed. My name appeared only once, framed by truth, not accusation. Claire had written, Evelyn Harper, a nurse from Santa Monica, became an unwilling casualty of a family's desperate pursuit of wealth. By noon, the article had gone viral. The same internet that had crucified me now turned on Chloe. Comments flooded in. So she wanted his paycheck, not his heart. That poor mother. Imagine being told you're not family after raising your son alone. Gold digger energy. Karma came quick. Ryan called me from work, his voice trembling with relief. Mom, people finally see it. They see you. But the Bennetts didn't go down quietly. Within hours, Chloe posted a long, tearful video claiming she'd been manipulated, that her father had controlled everything, that she was a victim too. She even said, I never told Mrs. Harper she wasn't family. That's a lie made to destroy me. I watched the video once, my stomach tightening. Her performance was perfect, voice cracking, eyes glistening, every word soaked in self-pity. But for the first time, I didn't feel rage. I felt pity. Because I saw what she was doing, trying to rewrite her own story one last time, before the truth drowned her completely. Ryan, though, was furious. She's still lying, he shouted, pacing the living room. Excuse me? Her lips curved, almost tender. You've done your part, Mrs. Harper. You raised Ryan. Tomorrow he becomes my husband, my family. And you're just extra baggage. I think it's best you don't come. Spare everyone the drama. For a moment, the world tilted. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands tightened around the scrapbook until my knuckles went white. She straightened her shoulders, still smiling, as if she were doing me a kindness. You seem like a good woman. How can she keep getting away with this? I reached for his hand, guiding him to sit. Let her talk. The truth has legs, Ryan. Lies need crutches. He stared at me for a long moment before nodding slowly. You always know what to say. But the aftermath wasn't all victory. The media storm brought attention, too much of it. Paparazzi began staking out our street. Neighbors turned cautious, their friendliness edged with curiosity. At work, my supervisor pulled me aside, saying, Evelyn, we're getting calls. Some people are asking if you really sabotaged your son's wedding. I forced a smile. People love a good story. It doesn't mean it's true. She hesitated. We know. But maybe take a few days off until things settle. So I did. I spent the next few days at home, trying to breathe. Every time the phone buzzed, I flinched. Every time I opened the curtains, I half expected another camera flash. Then one afternoon, there was a knock at the door. It was Chloe. She looked nothing like the polished woman I'd seen at the hotel. Her hair was tangled, her eyes red, mascara smudged. She stood there clutching her purse, shaking. Mrs. Harper, she whispered, please, I need to talk. Every instinct screamed to shut the door, to protect the peace I'd barely rebuilt. But something, perhaps that stubborn compassion that motherhood carves into your bones, made me step aside. She walked in slowly, glancing around the modest living room. It's smaller than I imagined, she said quietly, almost to herself. I folded my arms. Why are you here, Chloe? She swallowed hard. You won. Okay? You and your journalist friend destroyed my family. My father's under investigation, our accounts are frozen, and I have nothing left. He didn't reply. Her voice cracked. I just wanted to say I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone. Isaac, best for everyone? I cut in, my tone sharper than I intended. You lied to my son. You used him. You humiliated me. And you call that best? Tears welled in her eyes. I was scared. My father. He said if I didn't marry Ryan, we'd lose everything. He said Ryan could fix it all. I looked at her for a long time. For a fleeting second, I saw not the manipulative woman who'd tried to erase me, but a frightened girl trapped by greed she didn't create but still chose to serve. I don't hate you, Chloe, I said softly. But I'll never forgive what you did to my son. She nodded, wiping her tears. I don't expect you to. We stood there in silence, two women bound by pain and choices that couldn't be undone. Then she whispered, For what it's worth, I did love him once. I didn't answer. She turned and walked out, her heels echoing down the steps like fading regrets. After she left, I stood by the window for a long time, watching the sky turn gold over the ocean. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt free. When Ryan came home that evening, I told him about her visit. He was quiet for a long time, then finally said, She's getting what she deserves, but part of me still feels sorry for her. That's because you have a good heart, I said, touching his cheek. Don't ever lose that, even for people who don't deserve it. The investigation into the Bennetts went on for months. They were charged with fraud and conspiracy, their assets seized. Chloe vanished from the public eye, moving somewhere up north, as the news called it, a family tragedy born of greed. For us, life slowly returned to normal. The gossip faded. The reporters left. My job welcomed me back. One evening, Ryan came home with takeout, setting it on the table. Mom, he said softly, I've been offered a position at a firm in San Diego. It's a big step, and I think I'm ready. End quote. I smiled, pride swelling in my chest. Then go, sweetheart. The world is waiting for you. He hesitated. I just don't want to leave you alone. I laughed. Ryan, I've been alone most of my life, but now it doesn't feel lonely anymore. That night, after he went to bed, I stood on the porch, breathing in the ocean air. The wind carried the faintest scent of jasmine from the neighbor's yard. The waves rolled gently, soft and forgiving. For the first time in years, I felt peace, not the fragile kind, but the kind that comes after surviving a storm and realizing you're still standing. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. Too quiet, in fact. The kind of silence that feels both foreign and fragile, as if any sudden noise might shatter it. The chaos had finally settled, the lawsuits withdrawn, the headlines replaced by newer scandals, and the Bennett family fading into the background of California gossip. Don't embarrass yourself by clinging on. I wanted to speak, to tell her that families aren't something you erase like a stain on a tablecloth. But my throat locked. The words stuck, heavy and burning. I could only nod, numb, as she patted my arm like I was a child who'd dropped her ice cream. Go home, Mrs. Harper, she said. Sleep in. Tomorrow will be the happiest day of our lives. I didn't remember leaving the restaurant. I didn't remember the drive back along the Pacific Coast Highway. For the first time in nearly a year, I could wake up without my stomach tightening at the thought of what the world might say about me next. I began each morning the same way. A cup of coffee, the ocean breeze seeping through the cracked kitchen window, and the faint sound of gulls circling over Santa Monica Bay. My house, small but warm, smelled like peace, a mix of salt, coffee, and the jasmine I'd planted by the porch months earlier, back when I still believed I was growing flowers for a wedding that never happened. Life had resumed its gentle rhythm. I returned to work at the rehab center, my colleagues greeting me with cautious smiles that slowly turned genuine. The first week back, I half expected whispers, but instead I was met with kindness. One of the younger nurses, a bright-eyed girl named Monica, stopped me in the break room one afternoon. Mrs. Harper, she said softly, I just wanted you to know. I read that article. You're incredible. The way you stood up for yourself and your son, it gave me courage. I blinked, surprised. Courage? She nodded. My mother's going through something similar. Her boyfriend treats her terribly, but she keeps forgiving him. I showed her your story, and she said, if that woman can stand up for herself, so can I. I smiled, touched in a way I hadn't felt in months. Tell your mom she's stronger than she knows. After Monica left, I sat there for a while, staring at my reflection in the coffee pot's chrome surface. I looked older. The months of stress had etched faint lines around my mouth and eyes. But there was something else there too. Something steadier. Strength that didn't come from fighting, but from surviving. That evening, Ryan called from San Diego. His voice was lighter, freer than I'd heard it in a long time. Mom, the new firm's incredible, he said. They actually value what I do. I feel like I can breathe again. That's wonderful, I said, smiling. Have you made any friends there? He chuckled. A few. There's one woman, Natalie. She's in the same department. Kind, grounded, nothing like, well, you know. I laughed softly. I'm glad, honey. You deserve peace. There was a pause. Mom, I know I said it before, but thank you. For everything. You didn't just save me from Chloe. You saved me from becoming someone who accepts less than he deserves. His words warmed me like sunlight through a window. After we hung up, I sat for a long time, thinking about all the years I'd carried him through storms, never realizing that one day he'd carry me too, not with money or protection, but with gratitude. A few days later, I decided to take a drive. I hadn't been beyond the city limits in months. The Pacific Coast Highway stretched before me, endless and blue, like a ribbon of freedom. I drove with the windows down, the wind tangling my hair, the ocean on my left glinting like glass. Somewhere near Malibu, I pulled over at a lookout point, the very same one I'd stopped at the night before the wedding, when I thought I was losing everything. The air smelled the same, but it didn't sting anymore. I walked toward the railing, closing my eyes for a moment as the breeze brushed my face. I thought of that woman, the me, from a year ago, clutching a scrapbook and a broken heart, feeling invisible, disposable. And I realized something profound. I hadn't been erased. I had been rewritten. People talk about healing like it's a straight line, like one day you wake up and the pain is gone. But it's not. Healing is circular. It loops back when you least expect it. You revisit the hurt, but each time, it stings a little less. When I returned home, I found a package waiting at my door. It was from Ryan. Inside was a small framed photo, him and me on the porch, both laughing, the ocean behind us. Underneath, he'd written in neat handwriting, "You are my home." I cried, not the kind of tears that ache, but the kind that cleanse. A week later, Carol came by with takeout and a bottle of wine. We sat on the porch, watching the sunset burn gold across the water. "You look lighter," she said, handing me a glass. "I feel lighter," I admitted. "For the first time, I'm not looking over my shoulder." She smiled. "You earned that peace, Evelyn. You fought hard for it." "I didn't fight alone," I said. "Without you, I'd still be lost in their lies." She shrugged. "Maybe. But you were the one who faced them. I just held the flashlight." But I remember standing in my living room, staring at the scrapbook. My hands shook so badly the ribbon came undone. Each photograph blurred behind tears, the picture of Ryan with missing front teeth, the one of him holding his first trophy, the graduation photo where I'd nearly collapsed from pride. Chloe's words echoed again and again. "You're no longer part of this family." End of all. We laughed, and for a while we drank in silence. The kind of silence that feels comfortable, the space between old friends who have seen too much and survived anyway. As twilight deepened, Carol turned to me. "So what now? What's next for you?" I looked out at the horizon where the last line of sunlight kissed the ocean. "I think I'm going to live," I said simply. "Not just exist, not just endure. Really live. Maybe travel. Maybe start that community garden I've always talked about. Maybe write." She raised an eyebrow. "Right?" I smiled. "People keep telling my story, Carol. Maybe it's time I tell it myself." She lifted her glass. "To that, my friend. To the woman who found her voice." I clinked my glass against hers. "And to the storm that taught me how to use it." In the months that followed, I did start writing. Just a little at first, short reflections, memories, moments of motherhood that once felt ordinary, but now glowed with meaning. I wrote about the nights I stayed up waiting for Ryan's fever to break, about the mornings I walked to work under gray skies, about the sound of his laughter echoing through our tiny apartment. And then, one evening, I found myself writing about Chloe not with anger, but with understanding. I wrote that some people mistake love for salvation, not realizing that love can't save what greed has already poisoned. I wrote that forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of carrying it. When I finished, I sat back, staring at the words on the screen. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim or a survivor. I felt like a woman who had lived fully, painfully, beautifully. Life, I realized, doesn't give us the endings we expect. It gives us the endings we earn. A few months later, I visited Ryan in San Diego. He introduced me to Natalie, the woman he'd mentioned, warm eyes, gentle laugh, the kind of person who listens more than she talks. We had dinner at a small seaside restaurant, and I watched them together, the easy way they moved, the unforced laughter between them. As we left, Ryan wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "I'm happy, Mom," he said, "truly happy." And I believed him. When I drove home that night, the highway shimmered under the moonlight. I felt an immense calm, the kind that comes when you've walked through every kind of pain and finally found peace waiting on the other side. Back in Santa Monica, I parked the car and stood for a moment outside, listening to the sound of the waves. The jasmine had bloomed again, filling the air with its quiet sweetness. I walked inside, turned off my phone, and sat by the window with a cup of tea. Outside, the ocean moved endlessly, waves folding into waves, a rhythm older and wiser than any of us. And in that rhythm, I found my own. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to fix, to fight, or to prove. I simply existed, a mother, a woman, a survivor, content with the knowledge that I had faced the worst and come out whole. The storm was over, but the calm that followed that was mine to keep. Spring in Santa Monica came softly that year. The days stretched longer. The mornings smelled of citrus and salt, and the light carried that golden warmth that made everything, even old memories, look gentler. My garden bloomed again, small but determined. Daisies by the fence, lavender by the porch, and the jasmine, of course, curling up the railing as if reaching for forgiveness. Ryan called every Sunday evening, just like he used to when he was away at college. Sometimes he'd talk about cases at his firm, sometimes about Natalie, and sometimes about nothing at all, just the sound of my voice. I loved those calls. They reminded me that no matter how old a child grows, a mother's presence is still their quiet home base, their heartbeat in the background of chaos. One Sunday, he surprised me with a question. "Mom," he said, "if Dad were still around, do you think everything would have been different?" I hadn't heard his father's name spoken in years. It caught me off guard. I looked out at the horizon before answering. Different? Maybe? Better? I don't know. Sometimes life takes people out of your story, so you can become who you're meant to be. Ryan was quiet for a while. Then he said, "You've become someone incredible, Mom." The words hung in the air like sunlight. It's strange, isn't it? You spend decades wondering if you did enough, gave enough, loved enough, and then one sentence from your child reminds you that you did.